All right, so thanks to everyone so much for being in this presentation. And we are going to be talking about a topic that is very near and dear to my heart, and that is class-to-class collaborations. If you want to get your class connected with another class in your same state or in another state or province, depending on where you live, or another country around the world, there are some really, really cool ways we can do it. There's lots of things that we can do. And I can tell you from personal experience that getting my students connected with another class and helping them to get to know them and see their different perspectives on things was enormous. It's one of my absolute favorite things that I've ever done in a classroom with students. And so that's what we're going to be talking about. My name's Matt Miller. I taught high school Spanish for more than 10 years here in rural West Central Indiana. I am a Skype master teacher, Microsoft and education expert, and a Flipgrid ambassador. And the reason I bring all those up is those are some of the types of tools that we're going to be talking about today. So also the author of 4 books and run ditchthattextbook.com. So super, super pumped to be with all of you. And as I mentioned earlier, I would love to hear your experiences with video calls. And even if you don't have any experiences, if you see something in here that you think you might like to try, I want to hear about that too. So I'm going to be watching the chat and I'm going to be shouting things out. So I'd love for this to be kind of a collaborative process where everybody's able to kind of share in everything. I get a couple of questions in these, so I'm going to touch on some of those real quick. We're going to try to keep our microphones muted and our webcams off. I do love to interact, like I said, so ideas and questions in the chat, I'm going to keep an eye on those. Sometimes people like to ask about video replays. Now that we're doing these on Teams, it's much easier for us to offer those video replays, and all of them I've seen have been on that YouTube channel right there, youtube.com/QInc. And as of now, we don't have certificates for professional development credit. I'm trying to find some sustainable ways that we can do that. And I know the Global EdTech Academy is thinking about that. So those are some answers to some frequently asked questions. All right. I think we're about ready to get this started. So I wanted to front load you with a couple of things that I thought might be useful to you. And here's one of them. In fact, I'm going to type this into the chat real quick. If you go to ditchthattextbook.com, ditchthattextbook.com/101. ditchthattextbook.com/101. And if you go there, I've got some free stuff for you. You all do like free stuff, right? So what you see on the screen is a sampling of it. I've got these 3 free ebooks that you can get. Rosanna's like, yep, I see it in the chat. She's like, yes, we do like free stuff. We got these 3 free ebooks. One of them is 101 Practical Ways to Ditch That Textbook. It's got lots of concrete plug and play, use in class tomorrow type of ideas, many of which work within remote learning as well. I've also got one that's related to doing that same kind of stuff with G Suite. And so if you use Google Tools, that's great. You can use that. If you use Microsoft Tools, because I know Microsoft is a sponsor of this event, so many of those ideas cross over to Microsoft Office so nicely. Then we've also got 50 free templates for teachers. These are the kinds of things that you can download and assign to your students right away without any effort. I know some people that like to take those templates and put them up on Teachers Pay Teachers and charge a couple bucks each time. I'm like, nah, let's just give them away for free. So if you want to get all of that stuff, ditchthattextbook.com/101. We'll get that sent to your inbox. It'll also get you signed up for my free email newsletter, which comes out once a week with lots of practical teaching ideas like the ones that you're going to see in this webinar. So that's the one thing I wanted to get to you ahead of time. And then there's also this. I've got a blog post that I wrote very much around the same topics that we're going to be talking about in this session. And so if you want to hang on to something that you can refer to later, I would direct you to ditchthattextbook.com/collaborate. Oh, you know what? that link doesn't work yet. Write that down. And after this session is over with, I'm going to go back on my website and activate that link. It's not going to work right now, but I promise I will make it work right after. In fact, I'm writing myself a note right now so that I don't forget. Okay. So, hang on to that, and that will get you some resources related to this that you can hang on to after the session is over. If you want to sign up for more sessions like this, q.org/Microsoft is the place you want to go. I've got office hours coming up tomorrow and a handful of presentations all next week. So definitely go check those out. And then again, if you want video replays, youtube.com/QInc. You can actually go to the q.org/Microsoft link, and that will get you to a lot of those video replays as well. So we're talking class-to-class collaboration using video tools like Skype for those synchronous video calls and stuff like Flipgrid for asynchronous video calls. You know, the ones that not asynchronous video calls, but like recorded video, so to speak. And so I thought I would kick this off real quick and tell you a little bit about my favorite journey into this. I alluded to this just a little bit at the beginning of the presentation. By the way, as I'm talking or after I finish up, I would love to hear if you have any similar experiences. So definitely throw those into the chat, and I'd love to shout those out. So here we are going back to my own high school Spanish classroom. And this happened several years ago. And I was looking at the way that I taught Spanish, and it was missing an element. It was missing something. And I thought maybe what I need to do is come up with a way to make the language come alive. And so I had heard about teachers, either through, I heard about it through Twitter or others just talking about it, heard about teachers using Skype to do video calls with other classes and with other people and everything. And I thought, oh, that sounds kind of cool. I've never done anything like that before, but it sounds kind of cool. And so I went to this one resource. I'm actually going to share a link with you to this later, but I went to the Skype in the Classroom website. You can actually find it by going to skypeintheclassroom.com. It's a great big database that's full of teachers that want to connect their classes with yours, virtual guest speakers, virtual field trips, all totally for free. And so I found out about this, and I thought, well, how cool would it be if I could get my students to get connected with another class of students? Mine are learning Spanish, maybe the others are learning English in a Spanish-speaking country. How awesome would that be? So I started browsing on the Skype in the Classroom website, and I came across a teacher in Valencia, Spain. Oh, Michelle dropped the link in there. That's good. Thank you. So in the chat, it's at education.skype.com. We'll get you to what I was talking about. Anyway, I digress. So I was able in that database to find a class of kids learning English as their second language in Valencia, Spain. And I thought, oh man, this would be so cool. If I was able to get my students connected with them and do a video call with them, that would be really, really cool. And so I just realized that I've had this picture up here the whole time and you haven't gotten to see my face at all. So let me throw this up here real quick. And so here, I'll just kind of talk to you like this for a little while. So anyway, I thought that this would be really, really cool. And so through the Skype in the Classroom website, I was able to send a request to this teacher. So I'm typing her this request. And I'm like, hey, I've got a class of kids learning English. It would be so cool if we could do a video call with you. I bet you probably have heard from every single Spanish teacher in the United States trying to get connected with your kids in Spain and all. But if you could find a way to get us a video call, we would really appreciate it. Sent off that email. A day later, here comes the reply. And she's like, nope, you're the first one. First one that's contacted her at all. And I was like, are you serious? We're like missing out on an opportunity here. So she and I kind of brainstormed together for a little while about what we might want to have our students do. And then we started doing video calls together. And we started with a whole class video call doing a mystery Skype game. And I'm going to touch on mystery Skype in just a little bit, but mystery Skype is this global guessing game where you have, and this is a screenshot of our very first call together, this mystery Skype game. So up in the top left are my kiddos from Indiana, and the main screen are the kids from Valencia, Spain. And so we were supposed to ask each other questions, yes and no questions, back and forth, about our geographical location, so that we could slowly narrow it down until we could guess what country the other students were in. And so we did that back and forth for a little while. And we were able to guess they were in Spain. They guessed that we were in the United States. And so when we got done, we had about 15 or 20 minutes, and my kids just got to ask their kids questions and vice versa. So we would ask things like, what do you eat for dinner? What kind of tennis shoes do you wear? You know, like, what kind of sports are you interested in? Different things like that. And that ended up being really huge for my students to get to make those connections. So anyway, after that, the other teacher and I, we started thinking, you know what? We're on to something here. This is really cool. What if we keep doing more with this? We had no idea what more was going to look like. We had never done anything like this before, but we just started brainstorming. So what we did was we broke all of our students up into pairs. And so 2 kids from the United States in my class, and so 2 kids from my class and 2 kids from Spain would all get together on one call. These 2 kids would be on like an iPad in my class, and these 2 kids in Spain would be on a laptop. We'd both be on Skype, and then they would call each other. And so for the first 15 minutes, they talked in English, asked questions, some predetermined discussion questions, answered questions. For the next 15 minutes, we talked in Spanish. And then for the last 15 minutes of class, they just got to talk about whatever they wanted to talk about. And it was the coolest thing. And I've got to tell you that being able to do that was one of the one things that I could do that really opened my students' minds to the world beyond our little county in Indiana. It really broadened their worldview, and they started to see that these kids on the other side of the world almost spoke a different language, looked very different than them, lived in a whole different place, but in many ways were just like them. You know, it's like what Maya Angelou said. She said, we're more alike than we are unalike. You know, I think that my students started to realize that, and nothing I could have done in the classroom would have made that connection in the same way as those video calls did. It was like magic. It was seriously so cool. And so that was my first real journey into all of this. And it started opening my eyes to the fact that we have these video call platforms. And sometimes we think of, you know, Skyping our grandparents, or, you know, doing a FaceTime with our friends or something. But using it in the classroom, a lot of times we don't think about that very much, you know? And so that's really what I wanted us to touch on, was what would it look like if we connected our classes together, and what could we do? Now, I want to stop for just a second and give you an opportunity in the chat. I would love to hear if you've had any experience with this at all. Have you done any video calls? Tell me a little bit about them. If you haven't, then, you know, that's totally fine. Just let me know that you haven't. But I'm really curious to see what people's experiences have been, because I know I'm not the only one who's gotten to do video calls with, you know, with other classes and with other people and everything. And I really find a lot of inspiration in hearing what other people are doing. So I'm really curious to see what you've got to share when it comes to that. And since I don't see anything right away, that's okay. Oh, now some of them are coming in. So Laurel says, aloha from Hawaii, have done mystery Skype and connected for global read aloud. Nice. So she's done some of these mystery Skype global guessing games. And then the global read aloud. If you're not familiar with the global read aloud, and she says grades 4 and 5. And If you're not familiar with the Global Read Aloud, this is a program put on originally by Pernille Rip, who actually is one of the presenters in the Global Ed Tech Academy. I'll bet somebody in here has probably sat in on one of her sessions already. And this is where they pick books for different grade levels, and then they pair classes together, into small groups, and they're able to read the books aloud and discuss them. It's a really cool thing. If you haven't heard of it and that sounds interesting to you, just go do an internet search for Global Read Aloud. We have someone who said, I had students read the novel Ashfall and was able to do a Skype call with the author after we finished the book. How cool is that? I'm really curious if for whoever wrote this, I'm curious to hear what the response was for the students. Like what was it like? But I have also found that if you're willing to reach out to the authors of books that you're reading or articles or things online, if the author is alive and you can make contact with them, the worst thing they can say is no, so that's really cool. We've got Misha or Mesha says, my first grade class was able to Skype Clyde Roper, the giant squid hunter, and it was awesome. Oh, I would love to hear that story. That is too cool. Michelle says, I've tried to set up pen pals, but this is what the students are most comfortable with, and they would love the mystery Skype. I think that they would. Yeah, I totally agree with that. Laurel says Perennial Rip is awesome, and then she put the link into the chat. So if you want to check out the Global Read Aloud, go check it out. And so then Christine says, I'm hoping to find either a teacher prep program from another country. Oh, that would be cool. Or at very least a teacher, so my students can see what it's like to teach outside the United States. That's brilliant. And see, that's what I was saying earlier. I think that a lot of this can be crossed over to whatever grade level you're teaching, whatever content area, if you're primary school, secondary school, university, whatever. I think there's a lot of crossover when it comes to this. This is a good start. This is great. So and for those of you that have experience with this, again, please continue to throw things into the chat to add to what I'm saying, because I want to make sure that I share your voice on all of this as well. So, okay, well, let's keep moving on this. So, so this was my class, and this was one of my very first experiences. And I have found that, and again, in the chat on this, if you see these benefits and you can think of another one that I didn't put on there or a different way of saying it or something, please do add to this list for me and I'll shout this out. But these are some of the benefits I've found is that, whenever you do these class-to-class collaborations, even if they're within your same state, some people even do these within the same district, maybe even within the same building. That's not a bad place to start. But when you do these class-to-class collaborations, then your students get to meet new friends from other states and countries. And at the, when they're in the K-12 environment, at that age, they're so social and they're so curious about meeting new people. So it just ties into that. They get to see other perspectives on what you're learning. So if you're learning together, let's say that you and another class are reading the same book, and you get together and you discuss, because they're in a different place, they may have a different perspective on what you're learning. It broadens students' worldview, like it did with my students. They got to see, people outside of the United States they would have never gotten to connect with. So that's another good one. Communicating and interacting with different people. So like, just the communication skills and the interpersonal connections that you make is huge. And then also sharing learning with an authentic audience. If students have learned something, it's so much more fun when they can share what they've learned with someone other than just their teacher, or even just their classmates in their own class. So lots of good stuff as far as that goes. Oh, we got a follow up. This is Jaron, by the way, that did the Skype with the author. Thank you for putting your name in there. He says, I've done it twice, and the students had the best time talking with the author. They were able to ask questions about why certain characters and locations were included, the research he did on the novel, etc. It was a great learning experience for both myself and the students. And see, think about that. All Jaron did was just ask. And the author said yes. And then the students got to have firsthand knowledge from the author about certain characters and locations and decisions that the author made as he wrote the book and the research that he did and all of that. So cool. And a lot of times all you got to do is just ask. So good stuff here. Okay, so those are some of the benefits. Those are some of the reasons that we do it. And I will mention that this does work really well in remote learning too. If you've done video calls with your class before, then you're probably, it's just you and your students. But what if you invite somebody to join you? What if somebody comes into your video call and is able to answer questions and talk to your students? It's just as easy as adding another person. And really all you've got to do is ask. So this definitely does work in remote learning as well. So this is the big question I'd like to ask yourself as we start to get into the nuts and bolts of how to do this, This is the big question. How could my students benefit from learning alongside students in another state or country? How could my students benefit from learning alongside students in another state or country? And by the way, if anybody's got an answer to that, or you think that you've got an answer to that, go ahead and stick it in the chat, and I'll shout that out during the presentation. So that's kind of our key question right there. So let's start digging into the nitty-gritty of how to make this happen. Now, my guess is that you're probably familiar with some video call tools. In fact, you're using one right now. Video meetings are an integral part of Microsoft Teams. So if you use Microsoft products and your students, if you're using Teams as your learning management system, then you've already got this sort of built in. So you could definitely use that. There are lots of other video call platforms as well. Skype was the one that I've used for the longest time. That's definitely one that that would certainly work, and that's an easy one to get other people to join you on. I mean, with Skype, all you do is you just create a username and you share the username with someone else, add each other as contacts, and then you hit call, and that's it. So that's a pretty easy one to use. So as far as the tools go, you've probably got a video call platform. And so what I wanted to share with you real fast was this Skype in the Classroom website that I mentioned earlier. Oh, let me pop back over to the chat real quick, because I did ask for some answers to this question. How could my students benefit from learning alongside students in another state or country? We have Marie said how communication is important, culture and language and all of that. You're right. And how it's different in different locations, Laurel says all the benefits you mentioned. Another great resource for science and authentic connections with scientists is exploringbytheseat.com. I've not heard of that one. So that sounds like a really good one to check out too. Then we've got Marie, how we have similarities with others, even in faraway places. Yeah, exactly. It's like that Maya Angelou quote that I just threw out, how we're more alike than we are unalike. We do have so many similarities. So I'm glad that you all threw those in there. Okay, so let's touch on this one real quick. Skypeintheclassroom.com. In fact, I'm going to back out of my slides for just a second. And I'm going to pull up the Skype in the Classroom website so that you can see it. And so here it comes. So this is, I keep saying Skypeintheclassroom.com because that's the easy link that I use that helps me to find it. I always come up here and I type in Skypeintheclassroom.com and it always takes me there. And so when you get here, you can do a search if you want to right here, but I always like to come down here to these 6 tiles because I feel like this is where everything, this is where all the good stuff is. And so you can see on this site, we've got virtual field trips. If we click through on this, we can see, you can see dozens of free virtual field trips to different places that you can check out. We've got guest speaker sessions. So if you want to bring in a speaker that has been vetted by Skype to speak to your classes, you can come here and you can find them, and there are hundreds of them to choose from. But then when we're wanting to do collaborations with other classes, then a lot of these other ones really are a good fit. You've got Classroom/Mystery Skype, and in this it says connect with another classroom for a cultural exchange or a game of Mystery Skype. And then you've even got some collaborative projects that you can jump into. And then we've got the themed collections and the special events. So let's take a look at this for just a second. This will give you an idea of what you can find. So I open this up and immediately I've got some tiles right here. And these are all, people or places that will do video calls with your class. And so we start to look through some of the places. We've got the Netherlands. We've got Medford, Oregon in the United States, Murfreesboro, Tennessee, Brazil, Israel, India, United Kingdom, Pakistan, Jacksonville, Florida. And some of these, like it says here, are classrooms, and it'll even tell you the ages. And so if you wanted to get connected with this class in Bangladesh, we can click through here, and some of them have more information on them than others. This one says, I and my students wish to learn about other cultures, languages, and history. And so what's neat about this is that you can get some information and then you hit this connect with this class. And once you're signed in, you've got to have a Microsoft account to do this, which again, you can get a Microsoft account for free, just like you can, signing up for an email or social media or something. And so you sign in with that, and then you're able to see, in fact, let me see if I can get signed in really quick. We're going to accept this. I don't think I've ever done this on this account, so let's see if it works. Yep, this is what it shows you. So that's that class in Bangladesh. And so all I do here is I just put in my name. Here's your contact email if it's different from this email up here. Your location and oh no, this is for me to register. I'm sorry. But whenever you do that connection, with another class, it does ask you some questions kind of like that. And then it sends that information straight through to the class. And then you're able to, kind of connect back and forth. Gregory asks, what's the process for getting our class and location on the list to collaborate for Skype in the classroom? Great question. So whenever you register, then like I'm showing right here. In fact, let me just go ahead and finish this up real quick. That is a Skype. Okay, you've got to have your Skype profile URL. Okay, it's not going to let me keep going. I really should have set this up ahead of time. Sorry, I didn't expect this. But once you go through and register, you're able to get yourself into that directory. So that should be able to answer your question there, I think, at least to some extent. So basically, this is one great place to be able to find, and it keeps trying to get me to register now. So this is a great place to be able to find other classes. So this really is one of my absolute favorite resources when it comes to finding a class to get connected with. Curious to see in the chat if you've got other places that you could find other classes to get connected with, other suggestions. Go ahead and throw those out there, and I'm happy to hear those that you've got as well. And then, of course, let me throw this out here too. Bill says, in further and higher ed in Scotland, teaching electrical engineering, never use Skype in the classroom. I think my students would benefit greatly collaborating via video with students in different countries. Yes, absolutely. Totally agree with that. I'll throw out there that you don't even need something like Skype in the classroom to do something like this. You can always just reach out to other educators that you know. So for instance, I know sometimes for people who are just kind of getting started with this, they will do a video call with a class in their own school building or their own district, just to kind of test the whole thing out. And maybe they'll play a mystery Skype game, or maybe they will talk about something that they're reading. You could even have older grades talking to younger grades talking to older grades. Lots of ways to do this where you don't even have to go global so much. So as far as that goes, that's one tool that I really, really, really like for making these class-to-class connections. And of course, that was the place where I was able to find my very first class connection for my own class. Okay, so when it comes to that, we've got Skypeintheclassroom.com is a really, really good place to be able to find some of these Because a lot of times when I do these presentations, that's one of the big questions people want to ask is, where do I find these people? Where do I find people to connect my class with? And I think that's a good place to go. Then there's Flipgrid. So I wanted to touch on Flipgrid just a little bit. When I was doing these class collaborations in the past, Flipgrid didn't exist, but I wish that it did. In fact, we even tried to kind of hack Skype to make a Flipgrid style experience, because within Skype, you were able to leave little short video messages. It was almost like a video answering machine that you could do on Skype. And so we were already doing something kind of similar to this, but Flipgrid is way cooler. So in case you're not super familiar with Flipgrid, I'll give you real fast what it is. It's a video response tool. So a teacher is able to set up a topic and ask a question or give students a prompt, and then students respond by recording short videos. And so this little cell phone right here gives you an idea of what it looks like when you record. And then once the recording is done, your video shows up as a thumbnail on this topic. And then students are able to go watch each other's videos. Now, this is a really good way to go if the time zones don't work very well. So for me, one thing that I didn't mention about my my Spain collaboration was that in Spain, it was like 4:15 p.m. over there, and it was 10:15 here in Indiana. And so there was a 6-hour time difference, and it ended up just being perfect for us, because that one class started about 10:15, and their school was actually wrapping up with school because they went to school later in the day than we did in the United States. And so it just happened to work out. But sometimes those time zones don't work out, you know? And so having a tool like Flipgrid really helps, because students are able to record these videos. And what you can do is you can set up a Flipgrid topic and then share it with that other class, wherever it is that you're collaborating with. And then your students can collaborate in the same, or can leave videos in the same place where the students in the other class are. And so Flipgrid can be a really, really good way to do this. Of course, it does sort of lack a little bit the energy and excitement of a live video call, but it's still a really good option. The other thing that's nice about Flipgrid is once you record a video, students are able to record a video reply to that other student video. So imagine with this one in the top right, this guy in the shades, let's say he said something and it really resonated with one of your students. Your students could watch his video and then click the reply button and leave him a little quick video reply. So the ability to interact back and forth within that is really great. Teresa says she loves Flipgrid and is currently working on putting together professional development on student voice using Flipgrid. So she's sharing the Flipgrid love with other teachers as well. I'm curious to see in the chat if any of the rest of you are familiar with Flipgrid or have some experience with it. And so while you are punching some of that into the chat, if you're interested in doing that, I thought I would show you one specific part of Flipgrid that I have found to be a really, really cool resource. And that's this thing called Grid Pals. And so when it comes to Grid Pals, here's what they've done. Flipgrid has set up kind of like a, it's almost like well, you can see it's kind of like a map. And you can create your own profile on the map and drop it onto the map. And then what you can do is you can come over to the map and click on one of these dots. Now, of course, if you zoom in farther, they don't look like they're all piled on top of each other. They do also have filters and an ability to search, so it makes it a little bit easier in that way. But you can click on one of these dots and get information about a teacher who is interested in connecting with other classes through Flipgrid. And so what they'll do is they'll give some information about themselves. They'll give social media contact information so that it's easy for you to reach out to them. And you've also got this email me and invite button so that you're able to send them an email. So if you can find a class on the Grid Pals map that you want to collaborate with, then maybe you and that other teacher can set up a Flipgrid topic, Ask a question or a prompt for both of your classes to answer, and then students just start responding into that same topic. So for instance, if this is what your topic looked like, maybe this is your student and this is your student, but this is a student from the other class and this is a student from the other class. And so they're all kind of mixed in together. And so that could be a really easy way for you to do these kinds of collaborations. I'm seeing some chatter in the chat about Flipgrid. Dina says, check out their disco library for pre-made grids and ideas. This is an amazing thing. I'm so glad that you brought this up. The disco library, also called the discovery library. It's this huge collection of Flipgrid lessons. Teachers have written Flipgrid lessons and then they've uploaded them to the disco library. Think of it as teachers pay teachers for free for Flipgrid, because that's basically what it is. It's got all of these pre-made lessons, and you can just take a lesson that you find in the disco library and assign it directly to one of your classes. You can adjust it, you know, and change the wording and add and subtract from it if you want, but you can just assign it directly to your class, which is super cool. Patty says Flipgrid is being used widely in our division for practice of French language in our immersion classes. Oh my goodness. Me being the, you know, having spent my entire teaching career teaching world languages, just seeing that and thinking about all of the applications is super exciting. Dina also says flip hunts for scavenger hunts. This is doing scavenger hunts using Flipgrid. It's super cool. And Laurel even mentioned in the comments, Kathy Kursnowski did a great session yesterday on the Flipgrid Disco Library. I thought Laurel was going to talk about flip hunts because Kathy Kursnowski is kind of the one who coined the idea of flip hunts. So if you're doing the Global EdTech Academy, which you are because you're here, and you're able to see one of Kathy's sessions, she knows a ton of stuff when it comes to Flipgrid. So I'm going to put that link back in the chat again. Oh, good. Laurel just said Kathy is doing flip hunts on Sunday. Go to that one. It's going to be really good. So go check that out. You can find a link at q.org/Microsoft. I just put it into the chat. So Grid Pals is a really cool way to find other classes to get your students collaborating. What else have we got on here? Mystery Skype. I wanted to touch on Mystery Skype just a little bit because there's a lot when it comes to that. In fact, if you're on the, let's see if I can find, yeah, here we go. If we click on the Mystery Skype button, oh, it's still trying to get my contact information. Okay, never mind that. On that Skype in the Classroom page, it has some really good resources about Mystery Skype when you click through to it. So if you want to learn more about this, Mystery Skype, as I mentioned earlier, is this global guessing game. And so the way it works, the way Mystery Skype works is you have your class on a video call with another class. And most of the time they're both sitting in their own classrooms. You know, now it might be a shared video call of some sort. It might be tricky to do Mystery Skypes during remote learning, but anyway, I digress. You have a class and another class, and this class looking at that one, and this class is looking at that one, and they see each other's smiling faces, but they have no idea where they both are geographically in the world. And so this class will ask a yes or no question to the other class about their location. Are you in the Northern Hemisphere? If it's within the United States, a lot of people's first question is your state east of the Mississippi River or west of the Mississippi River? Because the way people play Mystery Skype a lot of times is they ask yes or no questions just to keep things simple. And so you keep going back and forth, asking yes and no questions, yes and no questions, yes, no questions, back and forth, back and forth. And as the students guess, the number of possible states or countries that the other class is in starts to narrow until eventually they're able to guess which state that other class is in or which country that other class is in. And it's super fun. Now, as far as Mystery Skype goes, I thought I would also mention that there are different versions of it. The version that I just explained to you is it's sort of like the geography version where you're trying to guess location. I've seen lots of other variations of it. In fact, if somebody's heard of another variation of it, I'd love for you to put it into the chat. And so some of the other variations include mystery number Skypes. I've seen this with like elementary, primary age students where they try to say, they pick a number and then the other class will ask, is your number an odd number or an even number? Well, that's an either or question. That's not a yes or no question. They would ask, is your number an even number? Is your number greater than 100? Is your number negative? And they start to ask all of those questions and then they narrow down the numbers. There are mystery animal Skypes too. In fact, my friend Mike Soskell, who also is a Skype master teacher, has taught 4th and 5th grade in Pennsylvania for many, many years. He used to do these mystery animal Skypes. And before he would do them, before he would teach students about, the animal classifications like the kingdom and the phylum and all of that stuff, before he started teaching them those things, he would have them do one of these mystery animal Skypes. And so they'd get on with another class and they would just try to guess the other one's animal. And they would ask questions like, does it have fur? Does it walk on 4 legs? Does it have a tail? Does it swim? And those students kind of struggled. And so afterwards they would just logically come to him and say, there's got to be an easier way to guess animals, isn't there? And he's like, yes, there is. Let me tell you all about it. So he kind of set them up so that they would almost be begging for a way to classify animals, which I thought was pretty clever. So anyway, Mystery Skype is another fun way that you can do some of these class collaborations. Oh, Teresa is being generous. She mentioned earlier that she was doing professional development about using Flipgrid on Student Voice, and then she got all sorts of questions in the chat. Ooh, can I see that? Ooh, can you tell me about it? Ooh. And so her email address is in the chat for those of you that are in here. If you want to shoot her an email and get some of her stuff whenever she's done with it. So there you go. Thanks for being here for that, Teresa. That's really cool. Okay, so let's get back at it. So we're going to go back over here to my slides. That was Mystery Skype. So we've talked about some of the tools and some of the activities. In fact, if you've ever done any of this before and you've used another tool or another activity, please do throw that into the chat too. And I would be really happy to put that up here as well. Ooh, before we get to that, I've got to tell you one more that I didn't get a slide on. I'm switching off of my slides back to my camera again. You got to look at me again. Another one is just a simple online document. So this could be, if you're using Microsoft Word, this is just an online Word document. If you're using Google, this is a Google Doc. And this was a really cool thing for me and my students, because whenever we weren't on a video call with the Valencia class, we did some shared online. And so what we would do is the students would create a document. They would hit the share button. They would change the sharing settings to anyone with the link can edit. And then we would just share that link through to the other students. And that in that document, we could ask questions and have the other students answer. Or the students could work together in that collaborative document. And let's say they were going to put together a little report about a certain place in the world or certain thing that they're studying. The students in my class could work just as efficiently and easily with the students in Spain as they could somebody right next to them within that document. And so being able to do collaborative work together like that is really cool. So that's just yet another way that you can, once you make that class connection, there are so many different ways to leverage it, so many different ways to use it, which I really, really love. So, all right, let's keep moving on this. So we talked about Mystery Skype. Now let's turn the corner just a little bit. We talked a lot about the tools. I told you a story about my class. Some of you have told some stories about your own classes. And so now the question may be this. We've learned about how we can do video calls with other classes. We've learned about how we can use Flipgrid to record videos asynchronously so students can see at any time. We've learned about connecting in online documents. So what are we going to do with it? Like, what does that look like in a class? And so I'm going to go through a few of these real quick. If you've got an idea of in your own particular class, if you did a class collaboration, if you got connected with another class, somewhere else in the state or the country or the world, what would your students talk about? What could you talk about? I'd love for you to drop that into the chat. And so let me give you just a couple of ideas I was thinking about. One is obviously class content. If you're studying mountains or biomes or a specific novel or the periodic table of elements, or if you're learning about a certain vocabulary list or something, and the other class is learning something similar, I think it's kind of a no-brainer to be able to have class conversations and to be able to swap around ideas when it comes to that. There's also current events too. What classifies as a current event in your country may be different than the other country, or in your state different than the other state. And so being able to share what's important to you and what's important to your students, and then to be able to have discussions about it, can be so interesting. And whenever you start to see things in a different perspective than you normally see it, because the other class sees it that way, it can really be telling. I have to tell you a quick story about a friend of mine. He lives in South Carolina, used to teach primary grades. It was mostly like first and second grade he would teach. And he did lots of Skype calls. And one time his kids in fairly rural South Carolina did a video call with kids in New York City, like downtown inner city, New York City. So very different things. And so my friend tells this story about how his students, after they got done with the mystery Skype call, they started talking to each other and just asking questions. And so the kids from South Carolina are like, so do y'all like to hunt? Do you hunt? And the kids in North Carolina are like, hunt? What are you talking about? What do you hunt? And the kids are talking about hunting squirrels and hunting deer and everything. And the New York City kids are like, no, absolutely not. That's not anything that we do. The South Carolina kids talked about all of the grass and all of the space and everything. And New York City kids are like, we don't have yards. We've got some playgrounds and all of that, but we don't really have yards. And that blew the minds of the kids in South Carolina. And so just being able to talk and share perspectives like that, I think can be really, really big. That can be maybe the biggest part of this whole thing, I think. So you've got current events, what it's like to live in your location. I just kind of touched on that just a second ago. Books. This could be books that you're actively studying as part of your class, but I think it could also be books that kids are just interested in, when I was doing research for one of the books that I wrote, Ditch That Homework, one of the things we were looking for was, is there anything that we can assign for students to do at home that shows clear academic gains? And as my co-author Alice Keeler and I were writing that book, there was only one thing that we could find really clearly showed obvious academic gains if we asked students to do it at home. And that was independent, self-selected reading. They choose what they want to read. They read it on their own when they're at home. And that showed great academic gains. And so even if students are reading those books on their own, I think that could be really big. Oh, we got a comment from Patty here. I want to throw this in. She says, years ago via Skype, students from Colorado, USA sent my class questions ahead of time via teacher-to-teacher email about Canada. And she says, we're outside Winnipeg, Manitoba in Canada, as it was part of their social studies, government, geography, sport, food, etc. And honestly, my students had to do research to be able to answer. Oh, that is fascinating. Yeah, I mean, think about it. If someone asked you to give a summary of all the important things they need to know about where you live, how easy would it be for you to answer? Or how easy would it be for your students to answer, And then they were able to pass it along to the kids in Colorado. So love that. That's fantastic. Bill says in the chat, he says, 3 or 4 years ago, we collaborated with a college in Northern Ireland. Students chatted on a forum and designed Arduino weather stations. Wow. And then shared the weather data in spreadsheets. So they were either, I assume, Bill, collaborating in online spreadsheets, or they were making a spreadsheet and then sending it back and forth. And that is a really cool idea. And, talk about a way to pull in local data and then swap it with another class. That's another great way to collaborate too. I've always thought it would be really neat because whenever it turns fall here in the United States, or not, well, yeah, but here in Indiana, in the United States, whenever it turns fall, the leaves turn beautiful colors. And every day it seems you're in a different shade. And so I always thought, how cool would it be to take a picture outside your window of the trees every day when you get in that morning? Take that picture and stick it into a slide presentation. So each day is a new slide with a new picture. Picture, 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 picture. And then whenever you're done, when the leaves are all off the trees, then you can hit present on that slide and do, yep, Laurel saw exactly where I was going with that, a time lapse of the fall colors. Flip, 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 flip through those slides, and you get to see the colors change in front of you. Pretty cool, right? Now, take that slide presentation, share it with a class from another location, and then have them do the same thing and then share theirs with you. And then you get to see how similar or different they are. See, being able to do that would be really cool. Bill said uploaded spreadsheets to a shared virtual learning environment. Yep, that totally works. That's good stuff. So yeah, lots of things that you could talk about when it comes to this. So, all right, very good. We're starting to get close here, folks. We're almost to the end. I think this is my last slide, actually. No, I've got 2 slides. What could you do together? What are some of the activities that you could do together? So here are a couple of ideas I came up with. One is obviously record videos. If you're doing Flipgrid, just recording Head and Shoulders videos. Like if you can see my face down at the bottom of Teams right now, you could just record simple videos like that. Answer questions, that's an obvious, easy one that you could do. I really like this one though, create together. And this kind of goes back to the document I was talking about earlier, because I was saying how, students in your class and students in the class that you're collaborating with could come together in a shared document and create just as easily as they could with somebody right next to them. Now it goes beyond that too. Think about this. What if these 2 kids from these 2 different locations didn't just work on a document together? What if they built a slide presentation together? What if they record video clips, put them in a shared folder, and made a video presentation together? What if they got into, some sort of design program and designed like an infographic together? I'm seeing a comment in the chat saying, have you ever done an edu protocol with another class? This is brilliant. Cyber sandwich, etc. Collaborating with another teacher. Okay, so this is referring to, oh, look at this. I just happen to have it right here next to me. Referring to the ideas shared in this book, the Edu Protocol Field Guide. Edu protocols are types of lessons that are fairly low prep that you can do over and over again. And a cyber sandwich is an example of it. And that's one that's done in presentation slides, kind of like in PowerPoint. And then students are able to work through them together. And the idea of the cyber sandwich, by the way, if you're not familiar with what I'm talking about, go search for those 2 words doing an internet search. Edu Protocol, Cyber Sandwich, and you'll get lots of information about it and you can go use it. But if students collaborated on those together in the same file, if you're using PowerPoint, you could do an online PowerPoint file, use the share button, make sure everybody with the link can edit, and then they're able to come together and work on it together. As long as they have the instructions and they know what they're doing, it could be really, really cool. Brainstorming together, I think, could be big. And then there's even serve the community. I really like this one. This makes me think of the story I was telling. I don't think I told this story. I told this in another session earlier today. I have a friend who did a video call with his students and a class of students in Nairobi, Kenya. And after they did this video call, the students in the United States found out that the Kenyan kids lived in the Kibera slum of Nairobi, Kenya. And one of the biggest issues is drinking water there. How finding safe drinking water is really, really hard. And so these kids in Pennsylvania put together this big effort to raise money for water filters for these kids in Kenya. And they raised thousands and thousands of dollars, bought all of these water filters, and were able to get them to the kids in Kenya. And so see, I love this for a couple of reasons. One is that there was an awful lot of learning that went along with their academic standards and their curriculum as they did that project. But two, and this plays to what we're talking about in this slide, it served the community. And in this case, it was the global community. It was finding a way to turn that collaboration into a way to serve others. See, I think that takes things to a whole different level. It's cool to get to meet new friends. It's cool to get to learn together. But if you can make other people's lives better because of your collaboration, that's where it gets really good, I think. So I would encourage you, if you decide you want to do one of these collaborations, maybe think about, is there anything that we can do to serve our community or their community or some community? Is there any way that we can serve others by making other people's lives better? Just something to think about there. Okay, last slide, and then we're going to wrap up. If you've got any questions that I haven't touched on yet, go ahead and start throwing those into the chat, and I'll hit those right after I get done with this slide. This is my catch-all slide. These are class video call tips, just little things that I may not have touched on that are helpful. Number one, be aware of time zones. And I'll tell you, internet searches for just asking what time is it in this place makes this super easy anymore. I know when I was doing my collaboration with Spain, there was one time where their time zone changed. You know how in the United States we've got daylight saving time, and they've got something similar, I believe, in Spain. And so at some point, their time zone switched a little bit, and we ended up missing a call because of it. Don't be like me. Check out your time zone. So there's that. I always suggest doing a practice. It's the end of the day, and I'm starting to lose my words. Do a practice call ahead of time. So if you know you're going to call another class, maybe the day before, ask the other teacher, could we do a real quick 5-minute call just to make sure that my video works and my audio works and that yours works and everything's fine. This can save you a lot of heartache on the day of your call. I always encourage preparing ahead of time. Talk to the students before the call happens. Here's what's going to happen. Here's the way I want you to act. Here's what good etiquette is when you're on the call. You know, make eye contact with the person. You know, you don't want to do things in the background. It's just whatever you want them to do. And then debriefing afterwards is important too. Once the call is over with, the real learning happens when you're able to talk about what you just saw and make sense of it, you know, to be able to reflect on it afterwards. So those are some of those good class video call tips that you can take away. And Bill shared a link to a video of that student weather project. So if you're interested in checking that out, that link is over there in the chat. You ought to go take a look at that. It's pretty cool. All right. So one more time, there's that link that I'm going to make active after the video call is over. ditchthattextbook.com/collaborate. This is going to be a place where you're going to be able to find a blog post that I wrote related to a lot of the topics we talked about in this session. And then, of course, you've also still got q.org/Microsoft is the place to go to find more sessions just like this. So that pretty much brings us to a close, I think, unless anybody's got any last second questions. Again, I've really enjoyed hanging out with all of you. I hope that you've had a good time. I hope that this has been helpful to you. Again, if you want to get in on more presentations like this, q.org, which is cue.org/Microsoft, will get you there. So I'm going to shut it down for here, and I'm going to go activate that link. So take care, be safe. We'll talk to you on the next one.